Alright students, let's get started today. So far we have been discussing different ways and different life processes, what are life processes, and basically how life processes are carried out by different living organisms, ranging from small bacteria and viruses, microscopic single-celled creatures, to multicellular complex organisms such as human beings. And we are discussing different life processes about nutrition, how certain plants and animals obtain the nutrition, why nutrition is extremely important, because without nutrition it would be impossible to actually get energy for various processes. Alright, so let us see now to carry on with this chapter. Okay, we are discussing different life processes about digestion and nutrition, different forms of nutrition, and we discussed about photosynthesis also. Okay, and we are discussing about how during the process of photosynthesis, okay, these different, you can see here, and this is a textbook, okay, and chapter number this is chapter number 6, life processes, okay, and you should actually keep your textbook open and refer to this page when you actually watch the video. So by watching the video and keeping your textbook open, you know exactly what to underline. You see what is written in, what is highlighted in yellow, please highlight that. And also if a question is written here, for example, you can see there is a question out here, okay, and this is an important diagram. This is the diagram of a leaf, and this is where photosynthesis take place. Autotrophs are living organisms that produce their own food. Green plants and certain bacteria can produce their own food, we know that. All right, so for example, here you see a green leaf, underside of the leaf is shown. Why the underside? Because the stomata, tiny pores or tiny holes through which carbon dioxide and oxygen can be exchanged, through which water can enter the leaf and leave the leaf, transpiration, process by which water is lost from the leaves. All that takes place through stomata, or stomata are tiny pores or holes which are found on the underside of the leaf. And this diagram that you see on the page here is the underside of a green leaf. Why green leaf? Because the green leaves are called the kitchen of the plant. It is the green leaves where starch is produced. Sunlight, that is sunlight is converted, solar energy is converted into usable chemical form. Starch is a chemical, a carbohydrate, okay, a simple carbohydrate. Now you can see the underside of the leaf, there is a midrib right in the center, okay, and there are branches, and those branches are also actually there to support the leaf, and the underside contains tiny holes which are called stomata. Now you can see the stomata here, okay. You can see, if you look at the cross section of a leaf, what is a cross section? Supposing you see this is a finger, if suppose it's a pencil, if I cut it from here, then what you see here, this is called cross section. You see this part, this is called a cross section. So the cross section of a leaf, you can see there are chloroplasts, tiny cell organelles. Last year you learned, in 9th standard, that there are different types of cell organelles: leucoplast, chromoplast, chloroplast, colorless plastids. Okay, they are all plastids. Colorless plastids were called leucoplast, chromoplast, colored plastids, and one of the colored plastids is called chloroplast. Chloroplast contains a green coloring substance called chlorophyll. There are actually two types of chlorophyll, chlorophyll A and B, small a, small b, chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B. And there is a third substance called xanthophyll. Okay, they are found in the chloroplast. When sunlight falls on the green leaves, okay, it falls on the chloroplast. At that time, chlorophyll becomes activated, and in the presence of carbon dioxide and water, green plants are able to produce their own food in the form of starch. Okay, if you carry out an iodine test, you see, by putting a few drops of iodine, the iodine test will show decolorization there, clearly showing the production of starch. Now you can see the diagram there, cross section of a leaf, there is chloroplast, there is air space between the cells. Why? That space is filled with oxygen, because oxygen is required, okay, and that oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide fills up the space, and that space, when it is filled up, it actually helps in the process of photosynthesis, because without carbon dioxide no photosynthesis can take place. All right, then you can see the guard cells. Now you see the stomata, they open and close, when they open and close, they allow the exchange of gases and water. But how do they open and close? This opening of the chloroplast, or rather the stomata, is actually regulated by the guard cells. These guard cells are found on either side of the stomata. It's like this. You see the shape is like this, and when the guard cells are full of water, they expand. Okay, when they expand, the stomatal opening becomes bigger, and exchange of gases take place. When water leaves the stomata, they shrink again, and the stomata closes, the pores close. So it is the guard cells which regulate the opening of the stomata or the tiny pores. When the guard cells are filled with water, they become turgid. That means they are full of water, as a result of which the opening expands a little bit, and there is exchange of gases. When the water leaves the guard cells shrink again, and the hole closes, as a result of which exchange of gases stops. Okay, so this was what we discussed yesterday for chlorophyll and photosynthesis. Now you can see, okay, in the next page, okay, this is, if you look carefully here, this is a variegated leaf. Now what is a variegated leaf? A variegated leaf is a leaf which has got different types of colors. Okay, sometimes if you take a leaf, it is completely green in color, but sometimes if you look at some leaves, they have got 2 or 3 different colors. So take a potted plant with variegated leaves, for example a money plant. All of you have seen a money plant. It's a very common plant in India. Okay, it's a small plant, potted plant. It is used for decorative purposes. Keep the plant in a dark room for 3 days so that all the starch gets used up. Now you see, it's like fasting. When a person fasts, you see there is no more food, or the substances that is there in his digestive system are completely used up, and he feels very hungry. Okay, that is what fasting is all about. In the same way, if you keep this potted plant in the absence of sunlight, no more starch is produced, no more food is produced. Photosynthesis does not take place, as a result of which all the starch which was produced earlier, that gets used up. Okay, so keep the plant in a dark room for 3 days so that all the starch which is there in the green leaves gets completely used up. Now keep the plant in sunlight for about 6 hours. Pluck a leaf, take out one leaf from the plant, mark the green areas in it and trace them on a sheet of paper. Dip the leaf in boiling water for a few minutes. Okay, after this, immerse it in a beaker containing alcohol. Okay. Alcohol is of course organic compound. Carefully place carefully place the above beaker in a water bath, that means a large vessel, and heat till the alcohol begins to boil. What happens to the color of the leaf? What is the color of the solution? You see, it becomes colorless. After some time, the leaf will become colorless because all the starch which was produced gets evaporated. Now dip the leaf in a dilute solution of iodine for a few minutes. Take out the leaf and rinse off the iodine solution. Observe the color of the leaf and compare this with the tracing of the leaf done in the beginning. What can you conclude about the presence of starch in various areas of the leaf? You see, what happens is, wherever there was alcohol, okay, any small amounts of alcohol remaining, probably, okay, where the green part, you see, by boiling the leaf, what happens is the green plants disappear. You see, the green portion of the leaf completely disappears, and only in certain areas chloroplasts are there, and wherever chloroplasts are there, photosynthesis takes place and starch is produced. But because of boiling the leaf and because of the presence of alcohol, some of it is destroyed. That is, some of the green sections are destroyed and no starch is produced there. This clearly shows that sunlight is required and chlorophyll is also required, because without the chlorophyll, the photosynthetic reaction cannot take place. All right, now let's see the next part. Okay, you can see in this section what is shown here is, see, there is a question out here. See this question: what are stomata? Now you see, when you are watching this video, make sure your textbook is open. Again, I am repeating this. Underline, or rather just highlight the portion which I have highlighted, and any question which I show out there, for example here on the left hand side you can see what are stomata. Make sure you write it there. Okay, take a pencil, don't use the pen, take a pencil and write it exactly where I have shown you what are stomata, because you will find the answers out there. See, now let us study the plant, how the plant obtains carbon dioxide. In class 9 we have talked about stomata, that is the tiny pores, which are tiny pores present on the surface of the leaves. So what are stomata? See the question out here. What are stomata? Stomata are tiny pores present on the surface of the leaves. Massive amounts of gaseous exchange takes place in the leaves through the pores. for the purpose of photosynthesis. But it is important to note here that exchange of gases occurs across the surface of stems, roots, as well as leaves, not just through stomata. Exchange of gases takes place everywhere, but stomata is the main place through which it takes place. Since large amounts of water can also be lost through stomata, that process is called transpiration. What is transpiration? Transpiration is the loss of water through the stomata. A plant loses some amount of water through stomata, just like we lose water through perspiration or sweating. Since the plant closes these pores when it does not need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Okay, so when carbon dioxide is not required, for example, during the daytime photosynthesis occurs, but at night photosynthesis does not occur. So at that time there is no need for the pores to remain open, otherwise a lot of water will be lost. So at night it will close those pores. Okay, the opening and closing of the pore is a function of the guard cells. Okay, the guard cells swell, they expand when water flows into them, causing the stomatal pore to open. Similarly, the pores close if the guard cells shrink. Now, this is an important diagram out here. Okay, this is just, it's a simple one but important one. Both the positions are shown. In the first cell, in the first diagram, that is A, opening and closing. In A, it is open. In position B, it is closed. Now, you can see the stomatal pore is open when the guard cells are filled with water. They expand and the pore opens up a little bit. In the second case, what happens is the guard cells shrink when water leaves the guard cells and the hole becomes very small. Okay, but look at the green dots out there. Those green dots are nothing but chloroplasts. They contain chlorophyll. Okay, so now let's go ahead there. Now you see also what you need to understand is, if you look at it carefully here, activity 6.2, this shows how carbon dioxide is required for photosynthesis. We know different things are required for photosynthesis. Sunlight is required, carbon dioxide is required, water is required, and of course chlorophyll. So by experimenting, you can actually find out why and how these are required. For example, this is called a bell jar experiment. The top portion is called a bell. It is a glass. It is made of glass. Okay, it can be used to cover the potted plant. That's why it's called bell jar experiment. This is an inverted jar made of glass. Okay, so what happens is you take two potted plants. In the two potted plants, okay, there are green leaves where photosynthesis should take place. But keep both of them in the sunlight. You can keep both of them in the sunlight, but in one bell jar, you also keep a small tray, a watch glass. It's like a small tray. Keep it full of potassium hydroxide, KOH solution. Okay, potassium hydroxide absorbs carbon dioxide. So what will happen is any amount, now once you cover it with a bell jar, and the bottom of the bell jar can be made, you can use any sealant. Okay, that is any substance that can seal it. For example, you can even use cement here if you want to, but instead of cement, you can use any other different substance that can seal. For example, Vaseline, as it is shown here, you can use Vaseline to seal the bottom of the bell jar so that no air can leave or enter the bell jar. Now, once it's airtight, no more carbon dioxide can go inside the bell jar. Remember, what happens is there is potassium hydroxide only in one bell jar. That potassium hydroxide will absorb carbon dioxide. So after some time, there will be no more carbon dioxide in that bell jar A. In B, there will be more carbon dioxide. So what will happen is carbon dioxide will be helping the process of photosynthesis in B, but not in A. So in A, those green leaves will not produce starch. And if you carry out the iodine test, you will find that iodine test works only in bell jar B, that is on the potted plant B, but not on potted plant A, clearly showing that carbon dioxide is required for the process of photosynthesis. So if you are asked, what is this? Okay, basically, you see, this is an experiment. You can call it a bell jar experiment. Okay, this is a bell jar experiment. Explain the bell jar experiment to show that carbon dioxide is required for photosynthesis. Okay, explain the bell jar experiment to show that carbon dioxide is required for photosynthesis. This is the experiment. Okay, bell jar experiment. It is called the bell jar experiment. All right, now you can see this. Explain the bell jar experiment to show that carbon dioxide is required for the process of photosynthesis. This is the question and this is the answer, and of course you require to draw the diagrams here. Now you can see what is it, explanation. Always draw the diagram first and below that write the explanation. Take two healthy potted plants which are nearly the same size. You can see in the picture. Keep them in a dark room for 3 days. When you keep them in a dark room for 3 days, all the starch gets used up. There is no fresh photosynthesis because sunlight is not falling. Now place each plant on separate glass plates. Place a watch glass containing potassium hydroxide. Now this is vital. You see this potassium hydroxide solution, it actually absorbs. Potassium hydroxide will actually absorb the carbon dioxide. The potassium hydroxide is used to absorb carbon dioxide. Cover both the plants with a separate bell jar as shown it is in the figure, and use a sealant like Vaseline to cover the bottom of the bell jar so to make it airtight. Keep the plants in sunlight for about 2 hours. Okay, pluck a leaf from each plant and check for the presence of starch with an iodine test. If you want to show, or if you want to check the presence of starch, that is the presence of photosynthetic process. That means you are checking whether photosynthesis has occurred or not. To show that photosynthesis occurred or not, you have to find out whether there is starch in the leaf or not. To show that there is starch in the leaf, you use what is called an iodine test. Okay. Pluck a leaf from each plant and check the presence of starch as in the above activity. Do both the leaves show the presence of the same amount of starch? No. Okay. In the first one, most of the carbon dioxide has been absorbed by potassium hydroxide, so very little starch is formed. But in the second case, there is carbon dioxide. It helps in the process of photosynthesis and more starch will be shown. The color of the leaves, when you use the iodine test, it will turn dark because of the presence of starch. Based on the two activities performed above, can we design an experiment to demonstrate that sunlight is also required for photosynthesis? Yes. Okay. For example, if you put two potted plants, okay, take two potted plants in the same way, put one in sunlight, okay, and both are healthy plants. Both have got starch in them in the leaves. Put one in sunlight and put one in the dark room. In the dark room, you will see no fresh formation of starch, whereas the one which is kept in sunlight will show the presence of starch. Again, it shows that photosynthesis takes place in the presence of sunlight. So far, we have talked about how autotrophs. What are autotrophs? Autotrophs are organisms that produce their own food. Okay, you can see here this. Okay, I'll just write a question out here. What are autotrophs? This is a question that you should be able to answer easily. What are autotrophs? Autotrophs are animals or organisms, especially green plants. That there are some bacteria and green plants which are called autotrophs. Some bacteria only. These bacteria are often found in the bottom of the oceans in the absence of sunlight, because in the bottom of the ocean there is no sunlight. They are able to produce their own food, but they also need other raw materials for building their body. Water used in photosynthesis is taken up from the soil by roots in terrestrial plants. Terrestrial plants. What are terrestrial plants? Plants that actually live on land. They are called terrestrial. Plants which live in water are called aquatic plants. Other materials like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, magnesium are taken up from the soil because plants also require that. Just like our body also requires these substances. In the same way, plants also require them. These are called inorganic substances. Other materials like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and magnesium are taken up by the plants from the soil. Nitrogen is a very essential element, where most important element in the synthesis of proteins and other compounds, and therefore nitrogen has to be obtained from the soil. This is taken up in the form of inorganic nitrates or nitrites which are present in the soil, or it is taken up as an organic compounds which have been prepared by bacteria, from atmospheric nitrogen. Okay, heterotrophic nutrition. Each organism, now autotrophic nutrition is different from heterotrophic nutrition. Heterotrophic nutrition is nutrition in which plants and animals obtain their food from other plants, other green plants. That means autotrophic nutrition is the main form of nutrition, autotrophs, the green plants. Heterotrophs depend upon autotrophs. For example, a lion. Okay, lion indirectly depends upon green plants. You might start wondering, how can a lion depend upon green plants? A lion is a non-vegetarian, eats meat, not plants. But a lion eats deer, herbivores, and herbivores eat grass. So indirectly, a lion, which is a heterotroph, Okay, it has a heterotrophic mode of nutrition. It depends upon autotrophs, that is on green plants. Okay, each organism is adapted to its environment. The form of nutrition differs depending on the type and availability of food materials as well as how it is obtained by the organism. For example, you see fish. Fish live in ponds, lakes, rivers and oceans. They have to eat their food, they have to obtain their food from the oceans, from the river itself. They cannot obtain their food from land. They can't come, a fish cannot come on the land and take, eat grass or something like that. It has to depend upon its food in its own environment, in the water. Okay. For example, whether the food source is stationary, such as grass, or mobile, such as deer, would allow for differences in how the food is accessed and what is nutrient apparatus used by a cow and a lion. You see, for example, a deer has locomotion. It can move from place to place and obtain its food. But a plant cannot move from place to place to obtain water and nutrients. So that's why you see it has got deep roots. Roots which go deep into the soil to obtain water and nutrients. So each organism has its own method of obtaining its nutrition. There is a range of strategies by which the food is taken in and used by the organisms. Some organisms break down the food material outside the body and then absorb it. Examples are fungi like bread molds, yeast and mushrooms. They just break down substances outside the body and then absorb it. Others take in whole materials and break it down inside their body, like we, humans. We take food into our body and then our body breaks it down into simple substances and energy is released. Okay. What can be taken in and broken down depends on the body design and functioning. Now, obviously, your body must have the organs and the system to digest food once it is taken into the body. Our body is designed in such a way. Some other organisms derive nutrition from plants or animals without killing them. This is called parasitic nutrition strategy, and it is used by a wide variety of organisms like cuscuta, okay, ticks, lice, leeches and tapeworms. They are called parasites. Okay, sometimes parasitic organisms, there are certain creepers, for example, plants, which actually wind around the main tree trunk and obtain its nutrition from the tree. But it does not kill the tree. In the same way, sometimes certain worms enter our body also. Leeches, for example, leeches stick to our body and they obtain nutrition from our blood by sucking some of the blood. Okay, they are not very good. They are not something that you want, but that is how they obtain the nutrition. They are called parasites. Okay, parasitic form of nutrition. Now you can see there is a question here. Which organisms break down substances outside their body and then absorb it? The answer is here. Okay, bread molds, yeast and mushrooms. They break down food materials outside the outside the body and then they take it in. Opposite of what humans do. And the other question here is, name some organisms that use the parasitic mode of nutrition. The answer again is here. Parasitic nutrition strategy is used by a wide variety of organisms like cuscuta, ticks, lice, leeches and tapeworms. You must underline these and you must also write the questions, so you know when you are studying. See, self-study is extremely important. If you don't know how to study, then in higher classes you are going to have problems. And that is why I am trying to show you how to study. When you go through this, make sure you have underlined everything or highlighted this and also written the questions by the side. Okay. Then how do organisms obtain nutrition? Since the food, see the next question. Now, for example, here you can see how an amoeba, a microscopic organism such as amoeba, obtains its food. Since the food and the way it is obtained differ, the digestive system is different in various organisms. In a single-celled organism like amoeba or paramecium, the food may be taken in by the entire surface of the body. But as the complexity of organism increases, different parts become specialized to perform different functions. For example, amoeba takes in food using temporary finger-like extensions of the cell surface which fuse over the food particles, forming a food vacuole. Now you see here, what is phagocytosis? What is phagocytosis? The process by which amoeba takes in food materials and digests in its vacuoles. That process of obtaining food by an amoeba, that process is called phagocytosis. How does amoeba obtain its nutrition? And this diagram is extremely important. I have written it here also, important diagram to show nutrition in amoeba. It is called phagocytosis. You see these finger-like extensions. I'm just writing it here. These finger-like extensions, okay, these finger-like extensions, they are called finger-like extensions are called pseudopodia. Pseudopodia. Okay, finger-like extensions are called pseudopodia. What are these finger-like extensions? You can see that. See, finger-like extensions are called pseudopodia. Pseudo means false, podia means feet. So an amoeba has got false feet. False feet means pseudopodia. If you look at it carefully here, you can see this finger-like projections. These things, see pseudopodia here. Okay, these pseudopodia extend, and when they extend, they engulf the food particles and then take it inside the vacuole. And that is how phagocytosis occurs in amoeba. Okay, inside the food vacuole, complex substances are broken down into simpler ones, which then diffuse into cytoplasm. The remaining undigested material is moved to the surface of the cell and it is thrown out. In Paramecium, which is also a single-celled creature, unicellular organism, the cell has definite shape and food, and it is taken in a specific spot. Okay, the food is moved to the spot by the movement of cilia, which cover the entire surface of the cell. Now, what is cilia? You see this cilia. Okay, I'm going to write one more question here. What is cilia here? What is cilia? You see the tiny hair-like projections on the surface of a paramecium are called cilia. Okay, the tiny hair-like projections on the surface of a paramecium are called cilia. Tiny hair-like, just like we got human hair. It's very on the surface of the skin, small hair. That is called cilia. So, what is cilia? What are cilia? Plural. The tiny hair-like projections on the surface of a paramecium are called cilia. That helps to trap the food particles and then take it in. That is how it occurs. Alright, now the next section comes to nutrition in human beings. I don't want to make the video very long. Okay, it's almost half an hour, so I'm not going to extend it for beyond this. Tomorrow we'll carry on with this nutrition in human beings. But remember what I say. When you watch this video, please highlight the part which I have highlighted. Write the questions which are written there. For example, see here this one. What are cilia? The tiny hair-like projections on the surface of a paramecium are called cilia. Alright, you must write it there with a pencil. Write the question, see the answer, where it is, highlight it. So that is the way to study. In higher classes, the amount of material that you have to study increases, and you have to learn to study thoroughly. How to study. If I can teach you that, that would be far better. Okay, and of course, once the chapter is over, I'll send you a PDF containing the question and answers. Alright, that's enough for today. Have a nice day.